What you're looking at is potentially the most expensive home in the world, located just off the Black Sea and surrounded by some of the most intense security forces in the world, or otherwise known as Vladimir Putin's secret palace. This compound, located in southern Russia, is more formally known as Residence at Cape Idokopas and sits on a staggering 168 acres of land completely hidden from the public. In 2022, the estate was valued at $956 million, but recent valuations in 2024 are estimating the estate to be closer to $1.4 billion. While the main palace is certainly impressive, what surrounds the property and even what lies underneath the palace is what makes this property truly one of a kind. Driving into the complex from the highway, you'll first get stopped at this security checkpoint, ensuring that you have access to the property. From there, you'll travel up a windy road until you get to the top of a ridge before coming across the main security checkpoint. Here, there will likely be armed guards who will have had time to see who is approaching because of how windy the roads are. Near this main security checkpoint are several dormitories, which are intended to house the many staff and security guards, likely in the hundreds. There also is a communication center with a large telephone pole sticking out into the sky. If you're granted access to this compound and continue heading down the hill, you'll pass by 2 helicopter landing pads, as well as a grass field that's converted into a skating rink in the winter. Other buildings along this road include an outdoor amphitheater, a greenhouse, a church, and many other security facilities. At the end of the ridge, though, is the main palace that Putin and most of his trusted oligarchs will stay in. This palace has just about every room you could ever think of, including a large indoor swimming pool, a massive theater, a hookah lounge, a cinema, a casino, wine cellars, a reading room, and just about anything Putin could ever want. Diagrams show that this palace has 11 massive bedrooms above ground, but what lies below the palace is potentially even more impressive. There's a massive secret bunker system below that stretches over 100 feet underground. The size of the underground bunker is arguably just as big as what we see above ground. The walls of the elevator leading down to the bunker are made out of concrete, measuring 38 centimeters thick. These walls were likely designed to be able to withstand a nuclear attack. Inside the bunker are many ventilation shafts in the case of a chemical attack that could put poison into the air. Additionally, there's a fresh water supply, sewage system, and even a fire prevention system. Underground, there's 2 long tunnels that lead to the Black Sea in the event that Putin would need to be able to escape. You can even see the exit to these tunnels along the cliffside. Along the Black Sea, a stone barrier protects Putin's massive boat dock that could store any of his yachts, or even Russian military vessels that could be used in order to escape. There are multiple security posts along this beach that keep out the tourists vacationing in the nearby town of Gelendzhik, Russia. It wasn't until September of 2020 where suspicion started rising regarding who owned this estate. In order to hide the fact that Putin often stayed here, the land was leased to a firm that officially owns the residence through 2068. This firm says that they are leasing the property for scientific purposes and conducting research on outdoor activities like hunting and fishing. The actual owner of this firm is a Russian oligarch and one of Putin's closest allies, Alexander Ponomarenko. Nobody would ever know about this estate if it weren't for an anti-corruption foundation that has been going after Putin for years. This foundation is known as the FBK. The FBK was founded back in 2011 by one of Putin's political rivals, Alexei Navalny. Putin has repeatedly played it off like this palace doesn't belong to him, so the FBK have been trying to send in media teams to investigate the property for years. The media teams were never granted access, so Navalny and the FBK were forced to look for other options. They wanted to fly a helicopter over the property, but found a chart that showed the area was included in a Russian no-fly zone. No aircrafts were allowed between ground level and 13,000 feet in elevation over this property. The FBK wasn't going to be able to take a helicopter over the property unless they wanted to be over 13,000 feet up, so instead they sent in a drone to get a closer view of the estate. With this drone, the FBK was successfully able to capture never-seen-before footage of this estate. In fact, the FBK ended up releasing a detailed report of all of Putin's homes scattered across Russia that the rest of the world never even knew belonged to Putin. Another one of these properties that wasn't uncovered until 2021 sits on a peninsula overlooking Lake Valdai. This property sits on roughly 80 acres of land and is surrounded by water on 3 sides. To enter this property, you need to travel through the front gates, where many security personnel await. You can see the large walls that separate the civilian life from the heavily secured Valdai residence. On the other side of the entrance are security barracks that house the residence's security and staff. Further down the peninsula are several helicopter pads, which are likely how Putin travels to this residence. When Putin is at this residence, there's a no-fly zone that's imposed so that aircrafts can't become a threat. There's also said to be Russian Federal Security Service agents that swarm the dense woodlands surrounding the property, as well as the banks of the lake, making sure that no boats are on the lake when Putin is in town. Ironically, further down the road is Putin's boat marina, where there's several yachts floating there awaiting Putin and his staff. There's several large mansions nestled in the woods of the peninsula, along with very private sport courts that could be used for soccer and tennis, for example. Many of these residences in the woods and along the lake are used by Putin's close friends and family. If we travel towards the southern end of the peninsula, this is where we can find Putin's main home, right off the bank of the lake. This mansion takes up 38,000 square feet and has some extremely luxurious rooms. There's an indoor pool and spa, several beautiful bedrooms, including one for Putin's ex-wife, grand staircases, study rooms, music lounges, and several different dining and living rooms. There's also a secret playground in the woods for Putin's kids to enjoy. Then if we move down some more, we can see that there's a Chinese-inspired pavilion for Putin and his family to enjoy. It's likely that this Chinese pavilion is used for either guests coming from Asia or simply as a tea house for Putin and his family. Putin also has his own spa complex on this peninsula where Putin can enjoy massages, mud baths, and even receive beauty treatments in secrecy. Putin is also said to host VIP concerts for himself here, where this photograph shows party lights radiating off the trees on the peninsula. This residence has been in the news lately for obtaining new air defense systems as Ukraine has been upping their missile and drone attacks against Russia. Putin spends a large portion of his summer at this residence, and up until recently, the Valdai residence didn't have all the necessary equipment to defend itself against air attacks. New satellite imagery shows brand new missile defense systems placed near Putin's Valdai residence. These Panzer S-1 systems are meant to defend against short-range cruise missiles and drones, suggesting that they were put in place to defend against Ukraine counterattacks. Another place where Russia has increased their missile defense capabilities is in Sochi, Russia. Putin has a residence here, which is named Bolsharav-Ruchi, or more commonly known as Putin's dacha. The term dacha is Russian for a cottage or a home used for vacations. This residence is nestled high up on the ridges overlooking the Black Sea, similar to the residence known as Putin's Palace that we examined in the beginning of this video. Alexei Navalny and his FBK group has said that this home mainly serves as Putin's ski residence, given its close proximity to the mountain range known as the Caucasus. The Caucasus are what divides Russia from its neighbor Georgia. This Sochi residence spans roughly 50 acres up in the hills and is equipped with VIP cabins for Putin's family and friends. Russia has recently been installing new missile defense systems near this property, mainly located on the coast of the Black Sea. There's not a ton of information about this property, mainly because Putin only comes here once or twice a year. A property of Putin's where he stays extremely often, though, is closer to Moscow. Putin spends the majority of his time here, given its close proximity to the nation's capital, Moscow. However, Putin doesn't even travel into Moscow very often, given how bad the traffic apparently is. Putin does have other modes of transportation available to travel out of this residence. There's a train station less than a kilometer away that can service Putin's 22-car bulletproof train. Additionally, there's 2 helicopter landing pads, one being just on the other side of the river. An architect who was working on the estate in 2021 claims that the residence has a 6-story reception building with an ice skating rink, as well as a private hospital for Putin and his family. Putin actually stayed here for the vast majority of the COVID pandemic, given how close he was to some of Russia's top doctors. There's 18-foot tall walls that surround this estate, along with security cameras that are placed 10 meters or roughly 33 feet apart from each other. When other world leaders come to visit Putin in Russia, he usually invites them to come meet him at this residence. In 2002, George W. Bush and his wife Laura met Putin at this residence, as well as Barack Obama back in 2009. When Putin does rarely travel into Moscow, he's able to stay at the Kremlin Grand Palace. Since 1991, the Grand Kremlin Palace has been home to the President of Russia, which from 2000 to 2008, and then from 2012 until the present, has been Vladimir Putin. The Moscow Kremlin is a massive complex of 15 buildings, 20 security towers, and more than 1.5 miles of walls that are up to 21 feet thick. The whole property sits on 68 acres of land. The actual presidential palace within the Kremlin is guarded by a special and elite military unit called the Presidential Regiment. The palace forms a rectangle with an inner open area serving as a courtyard. This building here is known as the Armory. There's many ancient Russian weapons, armor, and jewelry that are stored in this building. It's believed that the value of the assets here combined totals over $1 billion US. This next building is known as the Terem Palace and is where Putin's family stays. The basement contains cells and storerooms, and then on the first floor there's workshops for garment creation, and then on the second and third floor is where you'll find the royal family's personal rooms. Despite this palace looking incredible inside, as mentioned before, Putin doesn't feel the need to come into the city of Moscow to govern the country. Putin makes most of his decisions from the comfort of his own homes scattered across Russia, and even from his homes in other countries. Off the coast of the Mediterranean Sea in Marbella, Spain, Vladimir Putin has his Marbella residence. This massive estate sits up on a large hill that is 400 meters above sea level and only 10 kilometers away from the beach. When driving up to the residence, there's an underground garage you can enter that is able to store up to 22 different cars. Putin bought this property back in 2012 for 35 million euros or roughly $38 million US. When Putin originally bought this property, he had a construction company knock down the house and immediately begin building a brand new one to fit his style. Towards the front of the property is a grape orchard. Putin hired a crew of workers who were instructed to turn these grapes into some of the best wine that Spain has to offer. This residence has a 45 feet by 18 feet long pool that overlooks the Mediterranean Sea, along with a full gym, spa, cinema, and even a private champagne bar. This wouldn't be a proper residence of Putin's without several layers of security. Towards the front entrance of the property, there's 2 guard stations that likely have at least 10 guards in each. There's also believed to be an underground bunker at this property that features a high-tech panic room, as well as a control room able to direct the Russian military. A number of people have tried flying drones over the property, to which most of them have been shot down by Putin's security team. Ever since the Russia and Ukraine war started in 2022, there have been worldwide sanctions placed on Russian oligarchs and Putin himself. Many Russian leaders have lost their homes in European countries, including Spain. However, despite these sanctions, it's believed that this residence still belongs to Putin in 2024, given his security detail still guards the home. Additionally, in the Spanish property registrar, the person who owns the home still has the initials VP, which obviously coincides with Vladimir Putin. A whistleblower who used to work at this Marbella residence said that Putin would hire nannies to watch over his children at the home. Putin would have these nannies sign confidential agreements, but gave them tips of over £1,000 to make up for it. Putin always wanted nannies with a university degree and wanted them to be over the age of 45, so that the male guests wouldn't be attracted to them. Another home that Putin often visits in the summertime is located just 30 kilometers from Russia's border with Finland and along the shores of the Malahalty Bay. This is one of Putin's most secretive homes and is known as the Karalia residence. This residence is said to feature one main awkwardly designed home, along with its own helipad, a long pier for Putin's yachts, and a farm with stables designed for beef production. In January of 2024, journalists were able to bypass the residence's extremely tight security and capture never-seen-before drone footage of what this property looks like. Local residents say that Putin visits this residence at least once a year. While this property is still mostly unknown to the public, it's believed that there's an air defense system hidden under this green structure, which is meant to blend in with its surroundings. It's also believed that this structure has an underground entrance to the main home on the property. There's also a circular gazebo on the property that has great views of a 13-foot waterfall. There's a hotel just a few kilometers away that's allegedly owned by Yuri Kovalchuk, a very close friend of Putin and the man who is believed to be Putin's personal banker. Kovalchuk is said to manage all of Putin's properties, most notably Putin's palace on the Black Sea and his mansion along the water known as the Valdai residence. When Putin actually visits this residence, the local security guards get replaced by the Russian Federal State Security Force. The neighboring islands all get blocked off, and the property gets covered with electric fences. Sneaking into this property, or any of Putin's properties for that matter, is nearly impossible. When Putin isn't staying at these properties, he usually invites other Russian leaders to live in these residences. Many people don't even know who these other leaders are, especially the leader who controls the central bank of Russia. This leader is known to be the most powerful woman in Russia, and you can find out exactly who she is and how she became Russia's most powerful woman in this video right here.